Kia ora everybody, Chris Farhi here from the Bayleys Insights and Data team. I've got Eos Li from our team to talk about the biggest news in New Zealand real estate. Now our teammate Uncle Dakwali's still on holiday, so Eos, welcome to the show, I guess.
Oh yeah.
So with that said, we'll get straight into it. So over to you, Eos.
Oh sure. First off, the number of building consent for new homes came down in January 2023. 2,800 new homes were consented in January 2023. It is slightly lower than the number of January 2022. Multi-unit homes were up 22%, but standalone homes were down 26%.
Next up, the Ministry for Housing and Urban Development released some results from a survey of landlords looking at why they undertook rent reviews for residential tenancies. This found that roughly 50% of landlords had not increased their rents in the past year, but then those who did had generally blamed increasing market rents, higher costs for operating, so particularly around things like healthy homes, and then a small proportion had also blamed the changes to the tax regime. So these results are quite interesting. So for residential landlords, they can review their rents every 12 months. So it's not entirely surprising that only 50% roughly had increased rents over the past 12-month period. The other thing was that the small proportion of landlords who are blaming the changes to the tax regime, that's quite an interesting point, but we expect that might become more of a theme in the coming year or two as the tax changes really kick in, because for a lot of those residential landlords, they'll only just be seeing the first indications of the changes to interest deductibility when it comes to their next tax return.
Next up, Tony Alexander released an article on One Roof to give 9 reasons about why the housing market will start to improve. The reasons include interest rate peaking, wage growth, positive migration flows, fewer new homes being built, and fewer new sales listings.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. His thoughts reflect our thoughts around the role of peaking interest rates and I guess the removal of some of that uncertainty that they might rage totally out of control. The other thing is that a lot of the banter in the market around inflation has been focusing on the cost of living, but on the flip side of that is once inflation starts to settle in, if you've got a good employment market, which is what we have at the moment, you'll tend to see wage growth come through, and that tends to be supportive of the housing market, both in terms of ownership and renting. Next up, Otago Regional Council released some plans for their new headquarters. And so the location of the headquarters will be at Maglagan Street in central Dunedin. This site was closed by the warehouse in about 2020 and then purchased by Port Otago. And so the transaction for the new headquarters will involve Port Otago developing the new building and then Otago Regional Council leasing it back for 20 years plus some renewal rights. And so you notice there's a transaction between Port Otago and Otago Regional Council. The background to that is that the port's actually owned by the council, so that would have streamlined the negotiation of that transaction.
Next up, it is reported that the abrupt reopening of China is causing a shortage of student accommodation in Australia. 700,000 Chinese students who were enrolled overseas were encouraged to return to on-campus learning so that their education can be recognized in China. The initial pressure is felt in Australia because the semester starts in February, whereas it starts in September for North America and Europe. So it is likely that we are going to see the same issue in New Zealand, especially on the rental market.
Next up, our global partner Knight Frank released the latest results from their analysis into the energy cost savings associated with new build housing in the UK. So they analysed 600,000 new and existing properties. What they found was that new homes were on average 56% lower in terms of energy costs than existing homes. Now the savings were most substantial for new detached and semi-detached housing as opposed to flats and apartments, which makes sense because those properties would have a higher surface area of external walls. So that's where you start to see those benefits from the latest types of insulation coming through. As part of this work, they also surveyed buyers, and what they found was that buyers were generally more interested in the cost savings associated with energy efficiency rather than just the idea of being more environmentally friendly. Cool, and then to wrap up, we've got our property of the week. So Eos, what do you have for us this week?
My property of the week is 30 McLeods Road in Sefton. It has 7 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms sitting on 4.3 hectares. It could be used as luxury homestay, wedding venue, unique family home, or boutique accommodation. It's super cool. Please contact Mark Pringle, Jack Pringle, or Jen Moody from Bayleys Insights Data.
Yeah, it's a real cool property. For me, I've got Awaroa Lodge in Abel, Tasman National Park. And so this is a freehold going concern. It's got land, buildings and business for sale in this unique hotel. It's got 19.9 hectares of freehold land, 26 rooms, remote location surrounded by pristine waterways and native forest. And if you want to learn more, you can contact Wayne Keane or Jill Ireland from the Bayleys commercial team. Well, that's it. We'll wrap it up here. So thanks very much, Eos.
Thanks.
And we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Ciao.